So our focus this week is going to be looking at various option strategies and determinants of pricing of options. And in preparation for that, it would help as a first step to generalize our discussion so far. So we want to think about how are these payoffs and profits of different options that we have discussed so far. How are they related to the stock prices and the strike prices, for instance? So recall that we discussed the call option, which gives the right to purchase a security at the exercise price. So that would mean, for instance, that if one holds a call option on a stock with an exercise price of 80, and the stock is selling at a 90 on the options exercise expiration date, then one can actually exercise this option. Okay. And that would mean that basically one would actually purchase the stock at a price of 80 and sell the share in the market at the market price of 90. And that would lead to actually having a payoff of 10 per share, right? However, if the shares were selling below 80, then in that case, it wouldn't make sense to actually exercise the call option. So one would let the call option expire and realize no further gain or loss on this option, right? So if we were to generalize this, uh, let's think about what's the value of call at the expiration. So this is basically the payoff to the call holder, and that's going to be equal to ST minus X when you have got ST is greater than X, and it's going to be equal to 0 when you have got ST is less than equal to X. So here ST is the value of the stock at expiration, okay, and X is the exercise price. So let's be clear about what we are talking about. So we have reach the expiration date, we see that ST is the value of the stock at expiration and X is the exercise price, right? If ST is more than X, so that the value of the stock is more than the exercise price, in other words, we are in this world where, for instance, the exercise price was 80 and the stock was selling at 90. So ST is 90 and X is 80 in this case. Then if the call holder exercises the option at this point, the payoff to that person is going to be ST minus X. Okay. So here this would be 90 minus 80 or the 10 that we mentioned. Okay. However, if ST is less than equal to X, then at that point it does not make sense to exercise this option. And so therefore the payoff to the call holder is 0. So what this expression does here is that rather than just talking about 80 and 90 or let's say 70 and 60 and so on, what it does is that this gives you a general value of the payoff to the call holder for any values of ST and X that you can think of, right? So what you just need to understand is if ST is greater than X, then in that case, it would make sense to exercise the option. And this is the payoff that is going to the call holder. If ST is less than equal to X, it does not make sense to exercise the option. So the call holder will not exercise it and will get a payoff of 0, right? Again, this is just the payoff from exercising the option. So what we call to refer to as the value of the call. Uh, this is going to be different from the profit to the option holder, which is basically the payoff that we have seen here minus the original purchase price. Okay. We can also represent this graphically, and this would often be of use to us when discussing different strategies. So let's see what we have here. On the x-axis, we have got ST. So ST is, remember, the price of the underlying stock, right? And on the y-axis, we have got basically either payoffs or profits, depending on which graph we are looking at. Okay, so imagine that we have got call of, so this is the payoff for the call option that is plotted here with a strike price of 100 and the cost of this option equal to 14. So if the strike price is 100 and the price of the share is less than 100, then it wouldn't make sense to exercise the option based on the discussion that we have had so far. And so therefore the payoff, which is the value at expiration, is going to be equal to 0 if the if the share price is less than 100. Once the share price starts going up, then it makes sense to exercise the option, and therefore one will end up getting basically a value equal to ST minus 100, right? So if you go back to the thing here, X is equal to 100. So therefore, the payoff to the call holder is going to be ST minus 100. And this is exactly what is plotted here. So this red line that you see here, this is exactly the payoff to the call holder in the case where you have got X equal to 100. Now, this is the payoff, right? But this is different from the profit. So the profit, if you are calculating, that would have to also subtract the cost of the option, which here was given to us was 14, right? So you can see here that, for example, anytime the price of the stock is less than 100, this is not going to be exercised. And so therefore the profit is going to be minus 14, which is taking into account that the cost of purchasing this option was 14. Now, once the price exceeds 100, the stock price, then it makes sense to exercise the option, right? And if you're exercising the option, the payoff is going up, and parallel to that, the profit is going up. However, it's only when the stock price reaches at least 114 that the owner of this call option ends up turning a positive profit, right? So two things that you should take away from this discussion. One is that for this is how you write the payoff to the call holder for a call option. That's one point. And second, this is how you represent the different payoffs and profits graphically. So both of them are going to be of use to us at different points in the discussion. And it is very important that you understand both how to draw this sort of figures as well as how to write down the general payoff algebraically. Okay, so this was from the perspective of somebody who has purchased the call option. We could have also looked at the same thing from the perspective of somebody who has sold a call option, right? So remember, the person who sells this call option is known to be the call writer. And in contrast to the person who has purchased it and who gains if the stock profit rises, the call writer is in the exact opposite situation. And so therefore, the call writer will lose if the stock price is sufficiently high, right? Again, based on our discussion so far, this is because that person has to purchase the stock at a higher price and then sell it at a low price as obligated to by the option, right? So suppose that the price was of the stock was ST and the exercise price in the option was X, and if the call option owner exercises the option, which again, remember, happens if ST is greater than X, then basically the call writer has to purchase it at ST and sell it at X. And so therefore the payoff to the call writer is going to be negative of ST minus X, right? This is when ST is greater than X. If ST is less than equal to X, then there's not going to be any exercising of the option by the call owner. And so therefore the payoff to the call writer is going to be zero. Now, this is the payoff to the call writer. In addition, if you want to get to the profit, you have to add in the fact that the call writer is always going to get the option premium, right? Which is the price at which he had sold the option, right? So in order to calculate profit, you have to add this option premium to both these entries, right? So we can again also plot this. So if you have got STs less than, in the same example that we had, if you have got STs less than the strike price 100, then in that case option is not going to be exercised, and so therefore the payoff is going to be zero for the call writer, and the profit is going to be 14, right? Why is the profit 14? Because the price at which he had sold the option was 14, right? So this is this difference that you see here. Now, once the price exceeds the exercise price, right? Price of the stock exceeds the exercise price, and the payoff starts becoming negative, right? However, there's still a region where the profit is still positive. So, for example, if the share price is 110 and the option is exercised, then the payoff is minus 10, but the profit is plus 4, right? Because it's minus 10 plus 14, and so therefore plus 4, right? So the profit only becomes negative after the share price exceeds 114, right? Okay, so again, two things to note. So this is the payoff to the call writers. So we have to recognize this, and this is how it looks like graphically, right? The other thing to actually note from here is that if you compare the payoff to the call writer and if you compare the payoff to the call holder, you can see that this is one is exactly the negative of the other, right? So this was, remember, if st was more than x, this is st minus x. And here you can see is if st is greater than x, the same thing that was there, it's negative of that, right? So one is exactly the negative of that. And so therefore, if you add up the payoff to the call writer and the payoff to the call holder, this will add up to zero, right? And if st is less than equal to x, this is 0, and this is also 0, right? So that's one thing. And also this, if you are looking at the sum of the net profits, this is also going to be related in a similar manner, because remember that the difference between the net profits is exactly coming in from the fact that they are going to pay a price and that person is going to receive a price, right? So I encourage you to write down the similar expressions for the net profit depending on how the strike price is related to the uh, price of the stock at that time, and see if you can identify the relationship between the net profit of the uh, call writer as well as the call owner. Okay, so this was the call. We can do a similar analysis for a put option. So remember that a put option is the right to sell an asset at the exercise price. So therefore, the put holder will not exercise unless the asset is worth less than the exercise price, right? So this is something that we have already discussed before, but again, just to make sure that we have understood the ideas. So suppose that one holds a put option on a stock with an exercise price of 80, and the stock is actually selling for 70 on the option's expiration date. In this case, one can purchase the stock at 70 and then exercise the option to sell it to the put writer at 80, and therefore one will end up earning 10 as a result of this transaction that has taken place, right? So you can generalize this. So suppose again, as before, ST is the value of the stock at expiration and X is the exercise price. Now, in contrast to before, where remember, if ST was more than X, the payoff to the call holder was ST minus X. Here, if ST is greater than equal to X, then the put holder is not going to exercise the option, right? And so therefore, the put holder is going to get a payoff of 0 in this case. And if ST is less than X, so then the payoff to the put holder is going to be X minus ST, right? So that's where we get this generalize this example that we have so far, right? Uh, Again, what is the profit to the option holder? So this is the payoff. So you have to subtract out the original purchase price in order to get to the profit. Okay. So this is representing graphically what we have here with x equal to 100. So therefore the strike price is 100. So what we can see from here is if the actual price of the stock is more than 100, then it doesn't make sense to exercise the put, right? In which case the profit is going to be 0 minus whatever was the cost of the put option. So it's a negative profit. And as the price of the stock falls, then it makes sense to more and more to exercise the um, put option, right? And so therefore the payoff is going up, and correspondingly the profit is going up, right? And you can see that the difference between the payoff and the profit is a constant amount, which is equal to the price of the option, right? So there are also several things to note from here. So if you notice that the payoff never becomes negative, and that makes sense because remember this is an option, right? So you wouldn't actually exercise the option if you are getting a negative payoff. However, the profit can be negative, right? Because the profit takes into account that you have already paid uh, a constant amount which is equal to the cost of purchasing this option,